Steve Moran here with Senior Living Foresight, and I'm looking at that. That background's a little bit weird, but I think you can see it okay, right? And I'm at the RAL Nation conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and to just give a little background, the RAL Nation is really all about residential style assisted living. It's from most of my readers' standpoint, it seems like sort of a nobody cares kind of thing, but there are 650 people here at this conference, and many of them are either operating small residential buildings or getting ready to operate them. And today I'm talking with Brian, and I'm going to let you give me your last name so I don't butcher it.
Sure, it's Pinkowski.
Pinkowski. And Brian is the president of, give me the name of the organization. It's a trade association, essentially, for residential assisted living. And my question really to you is, in my view, in general, in the senior living space, we already have too many trade associations, and so here's another one. So why do you guys exist?
Sure, all right, let me back up. So this is the Residential Assisted Living National Convention, and we are the Residential Assisted Living National Association. And why is because there's nobody representing those residential assisted living homes that are 19 and under beds. So a lot of the trade associations that are out there are focused on regulations and whatnot that really focus on their specific constituency. And so ours gets left behind. So, for example, the Facility Guidelines Institute had a number of design standards that are adopted by health departments around the country, and those design standards aren't appropriate for residential-style care homes. For example, they had tried to adopt them in a way that required every bedroom have its own private bathroom so that nobody could go out into a corridor. Well, that doesn't make sense in a residential style home. And you might ask, why does anybody worry about that? These people should be in larger facilities, but of course that's not what people want. And we know that because there are more than 27,000 residential scale assisted living care homes around the nation. And that's only in the first 42 states that we've been collecting data on.
So I have a couple questions about that information. So I actually should have done the math. Do you have any idea how many beds that represents, or residents that represents?
Well, it varies by state, so I can't give you a generality, but it's probably 300,000 to 500,000 beds or more, depending on the size of them. So if you assume it's around 11 beds generally on average, it's in that range there, but it's not. It could be more because not all of the states have the bed requirements or the bed numbers for each of the residents, each of the homes.
And that's only 42 states so far. Right.
So far, we're still collecting data, and it's quite the effort to get this data.
So one of the things that I was really fascinated by, and I'm hoping I can actually get your slide to use as part of an article, but you put up a pie chart that showed the number of communities by state. And
that's just 19 and under communities.
And that's just 19 and under communities, right. So but what really fascinated me about that was that California has 6,500, something like that. I don't remember what the exact number is. And that was a number that I'd seen because I live in California. But Florida, being not as big, but pretty close to as big, only has like 1,900, right? Right. Which suggests there's a lot of opportunity. And Georgia has like 1,200, and I know there are huge numbers of large senior living communities in Georgia, which would suggest there's a lot of opportunity out there. So, do you see what you're doing or the members you represent as being a big threat to the senior living community, or do you think the sort of the more traditional big box senior living community, or do you think it just adds to?
No. Because some people just don't work well in that environment, and they want a more intimate personal care setting, and that's what the residential scale assisted living homes provide. And so it works out quite well. Because not everybody does well in those large communities. Some people prefer those large communities. It's just part of market options.
Okay, and so when you look at what are the big challenges that the residential folks are facing?
A lot of it is the same kind of things that the larger facilities have, which is ageism. People are terrified to have older people congregated together in any sort of a facility, whether it's a residential facility or otherwise. And because these are residential homes, homeowner associations tend to be reactive to what they don't know and don't understand. And so initially there's usually some confusion and upset there, but usually that blows by very fast. And sometimes the neighbors are very happy when they become residents themselves. So those kind of things are pretty typical, unawareness. People will complain to planning and zoning commissions. Public hearings can be pretty brutal, but then afterwards everybody forgets about it and realizes, oh, these are just like my grandparents living next door. Yes, that's exactly right.
So it sounds like when you do go to public hearings, most of the time you win.
It depends. I mean, it ends up. It depends on how well prepared the person who brings it before the planning and zoning commission is. Often, a well-prepared person who wants to put this before a city can handle it simply by educating the city on Fair Housing Act requirements, so federal law things, and that helps them handle a lot of internal upset that might be occurring with the neighbors just by explaining that no, this is a discrimination thing. Yes, in fact, people wouldn't be in assisted living if they didn't have 2 or more disabilities, and therefore you can't apply different rules to them than you would apply to anybody else. And so you're going to say that seniors can't move into a particular neighborhood? Well, how many seniors can't move into a particular neighborhood? So it gets kind of absurd when you actually work it through. But they're reacting to things, and so being rational isn't necessarily the starting point.
You bet. Well, the other thing that I found really interesting when I was listening to the presentation this morning is that from the large senior living community perspective, the fair housing laws are something that people are mostly just afraid of, and for some legitimate reasons, because when you look at it has a huge impact on how you promote your building in terms of making sure you've got ethnic and racial balance and gender balance in your advertising, and from your perspective, for your members, the fair housing becomes this big, a very valuable tool, right?
Sure. I don't think the Fair Housing Act addresses any of those kind of things about balance and ethnicity or any of those kind of things. It's pretty much just about access to housing. And so if a community, large or small, chooses to exclude some sort of a group for one reason or another, it might be a protected class, they're going to run into trouble. And I don't actually see large facilities having those kind of problems. They might have other sorts of issues associated with balance, but not Fair Housing Act in particular.
Yeah, I think the struggle that I see is certainly not an implicit bias on protected classes, but I think there's some implicit bias that occurs, and I don't know exactly how you solve that, because we all have it to some degree or another, right?
Yeah, so, usually it's an education process.
That's right. Yeah.
So stepping aside as a national association, as lawyers, we'll frequently write education letters. And here, dear city of XYZ, yes, these are elderly people. They wouldn't be in assisted living if they didn't have disabilities, therefore you can't discriminate on them. Yes. So often their standpoint is, well, they're just old. They're not a protected class. You're right. Being of a certain age is not a protected class, but they wouldn't be there if there wasn't
disability.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. Well,
right. And
well,
so
cool.
usually it's just an awareness problem.
So how big is the association?
I don't know
how many members? How many communities?
We're 1 year old. How many communities?
Yeah,
over 1,000 members right now after 1 year, and there are 27,000 more to go. So,
really, more than 27,000 more to go,
considerably
right?
more than 27,000.
Yeah.
That's right,
Yeah.
and so that's a pretty good start for our first year.
Right. And then Canada.
Canada's not in the United States. It has a whole different set of rules, but we'll have to work with them.
So
we actually do have some members who have homes in Canada. We'll just have to look at how that works out.
Well, that's the reason I was asking, because I have a lot of readers in Canada. I spent a bunch of time with some folks at another conference I was at last week, and I know I've met some people here last night who are from Canada.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering whether you're probably not trying to play, at least from a regulatory standpoint, in Canada.
No, one group at a time. There's 50 states here. That's a pretty good start.
It's a good start. It is, no question about that. Well, Brian, thank you so much for spending some time. I love what you're doing. Love the model.
Awesome. Again, we love your newsletter.
Thank you.